Dun da 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 dun 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 da 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 da.
Welcome to the Clown News Network. I'm your host, Mr. Anchor III. Portland Broken News top story. Portland City Council is poised to enact plans for banning camping in the city limits and creating mass encampments. Political newcomer Rene Gonzalez has now replaced Joanne Hardesty on the City Council. Don't be confused by the graphic. This constitutes a significant step to the right for the council. There. That's better. The City Council race, along with other races up and down the West Coast, centered around homelessness and crime issues. Many Portlanders cite Hardesty as oppositional and not willing to compromise, and blame her for a lack of progress the city has made on an incomprehensibly wide array of issues. With the change from the furthest left incumbent to a right-leaning councilor, the city is set to make Mayor Wheeler's plan to clean up the streets of Portland a reality. Or are they? This just in, 3 of 5 Portland lobbyists who are responsible for securing critical support from the state for Wheeler's plan have abruptly left their jobs right before the state legislative session begins. Inside sources say it had to do in part with tensions over the city's legislative agenda and difficulties communicating with the mayor's team. Sounds like Joanne may not have been the only one that's hard to work with around here, eh, Ted? Multnomah County Commissioner Lori Stegman had a few choice words for Wheeler. I am deeply disappointed in the misinformation, ultimatums, and threats that have been coming from some of the leadership within the city of Portland. If Ted wants to get his plan put into motion, he might want to learn to play well with others, perhaps hiring people who are able to... Oh my! Hot off the presses, senior mayoral aide and former Portland mayor Sam Adams has also left abruptly, citing health concerns and absolutely nothing else. Something doesn't smell right around here. Taking no severance package implies that he quit or was fired. He could have taken some medical time while still being paid otherwise. So, what's the big hurry, Sam? Did you have a widow disagreement with Teddy? Can't stomach the mass encampment strategy now that Renee is here and it might actually happen? Still, the dialogue between the current and former mayors is very cordial and... Holy homeless hunters! Ted now claims that Sam was ousted for creating a toxic work environment for women. City records indicated there's been a string of incidents reported to HR beginning only 6 months after Sam came back to City Hall. Wow! This story continues to unfold at a rapid pace. It appears that the final straw was a report that came from a high-powered city attorney. Yeah, you don't want to mess with her. Which brings us to tips for Teddy. Hi, Ted. Today's tip is about toxic work environments. TheMuse.com defines a toxic work environment as one where negative behaviors such as manipulation, bullying, yelling, and so on are so intrinsic to the culture of the organization that a lack of productivity, a lack of trust, high stress levels, infighting, and discrimination become the norm. Does any, or perhaps all, of this sound familiar? In order to improve the City Hall work environment, as well as promote engagement with organizations around you, we suggest that you refrain from facilitating this kind of environment. For example, it's important not to hire senior mayoral aides with a known history of exactly these behaviors while ignoring multiple HR reports over a year and a half until a high-power city attorney threatens you. Just a thought. Hold the phone! In typical Sam fashion, Mr. Adams claims that his get-things-done behavior traits couldn't possibly be the issue. This is a knife in the back, Sam told Willamette Week. There must be something else going on behind the scenes. Ho-ho! What we got here is a good old-fashioned mayor fight! Let's go to our crew live on the scene. We feel it's important to put everyone jumping off Ted's ship in a little more context. This all comes on the heels of outgoing Multnomah Council Chair Deborah Kafoury erecting a spectacular middle finger in Wheeler's direction in her final meeting last year. She tweeted, "The mayor's assertion that the joint office insufficiently focuses on chronic homelessness is confounding, and his threats to disbanded services that help 12,000 people stay off the streets betrays a striking, willful denial of public data and people's stories." Kafoury goes on to say, "If the mayor's office wants to clean up this city and enforce time, place, and manner laws, they don't have to hide behind me or anyone else. They can just do it." Ooh! At its last meeting of the year, the Multnomah Board of Commissioners allocated $28.6 million towards supportive housing services managed by the Joint Office of Homeless Services. You may recall the City Council voting to defund this very office by $8 million last year in order to divert funding to the mayor's mass encampments. The Board of Commissioners made sure that exactly zero of their funds will go towards Wheeler's controversial plan. It appears that the county has a pretty different view on what Joe Haas should be doing. The program is nominally a partnership between the county and the city of Portland, but no, not so much, huh? It will be interesting to see what happens next year now that Ted has assigned oversight of this program to himself. In a joint statement, Wheeler and Dan Ryan's offices said they would still move ahead with their plan despite not getting money from the county. And then this. Ted's office wrote a letter to the county, and this is true, demanding they not only fund the camps, but also build them, operate them, and provide the associated wraparound services. That's quite the ask. But it doesn't stop there. Ted also demands the county manage the 6 safe rest villages that Ryan's office has failed to complete, as well as fund and operate a total of 2,400 shelter beds around the metro area. And just to add a cherry on top, Wheeler wants the county to provide private security for all shelters and treatment centers. Whoa. What's left for you to do then, Ted? Enjoy peaceful serenity in the recently empty city offices? Seems like your lobbyist and senior advisor aren't the only ones who don't want to work with you anymore. That's not hard to believe after a letter that sounds like a grumpy toddler's idea of how partnerships work. Ted will probably throw a temper tantrum and yell how it's all the county's fault when this doesn't happen, huh? Since we have the technology, we took a picture of how Ted was feeling while writing this letter and used AI to approximate what he actually looked like. But we'll give credit where credit is due. Little Teddy here did agree that he would facilitate construction of 20,000 units of affordable housing by 2023 by creating an affordable land bank of up to 400 shovel-ready, publicly owned sites. I suppose gesturing hopefully at several pieces of dirt, asking someone else to do something with it is little more than nothing. Okay, we're not quite being fair. Little Wheelie did also promise to enforce a citywide ban on unsanctioned camping, provide outreach services for homeless Portlanders, and keep Portland Street Response running citywide. Presumably the city will be talking to the homeless people about their plans that the mean old county, who doesn't understand anything at all, will not be helping with. And then there's Portland Street Response, which is legitimately great. The program was brought to fruition in the last few years by, you guessed it, Joanne Hardesty. Despite being a prime example of the defund the police movement that Hardesty has been harshly criticized for supporting, the highly successful program has been widely acclaimed by people and organizations across the city. It now is expanded citywide with the ability for 911 callers to request street response in place of the police, despite opposition from Ted and the city council. Interesting how the only beneficial program in the entire portfolio of what Ted wants to offer comes from the disagreeable former councilor that he liked the least, and despite his objections to funding it. Incoming city councilor Rene Gonzalez was lukewarm on the program during his campaign and claimed he doesn't want to see it cut, but would rather fund the police and fire departments than expand the program. He recently told Willamette Week, "Right now, if I were to say where I'm inclined to push further funding, I would prioritize Fire Bureau staff. I want to be aggressive in evaluating outside funds for PSR." We at CNN hope that he'll come around to prioritize funding the universally lauded program, but that's a little like waiting for the aspirin to kill your headache when you haven't even taken it yet. Rene has a somewhat different view than Hardesty on how to deal with people on the street.
Yeah, we're not building nearly enough shelter. And I define that very broadly, everything from safe sleeping spaces to high barrier shelter.
Wait, did he just say high barrier camps? What do you mean by that, Rene? Afraid to say prison camps outright? Yeah, I get it. That might make people too uncomfortable with the idea, huh? Rene has also gained local fame for the now traditional city candidate practice of campaign finance violations. Oh, but don't worry, his judge buddy bailed him out on this one. And let's not forget fear-mongering, using a misinterpreted graphic allegedly associating homeless camps with gun violence. Gonzalez later corrected himself on the graphic, but never took down his social media posts despite a veritable shellacking from Twitter users and multiple news stories about the error. As of this broadcast, his Twitter post is still there. And probably will be until Elon finally causes Twitter to self-destruct in a burst of flames like a, well, you know. This brings us to tonight's tip for Rene. Hi Rene, today's tip is about spreading misinformation. When the citizens you represent inform you that you've shared misinformation, even if it was intentional, you should not only acknowledge the fact that you were incorrect and maybe even apologize, but also take the information down immediately. If you don't, it's kind of like putting up a big sign that's wrong, and instead of taking the sign down, putting up a smaller sign underneath that says, "This sign is wrong." His term ought to be interesting, if these kind of things and tweeting support for local Proud Boys is what floats your boat. But at least the disagreeable city council member is gone, right? We don't want people on the council that oppose the team on such matters as granting a $100,000 severance package to a cop who told fellow officers to go out and shoot black people on a roll call, maybe now the city will finally be able to get things done. Or not. Before we go, we'd like to tip our hat to Multnomah County, which has just enacted a housing first policy called Housing Multnomah Now. Chair Vega Peterson said, "The goal of this model is to connect people directly to housing and stop the shuffle of moving people from one location to another as they're living outside." Whoa! We're really excited to see what will happen with this program. This has been your Portland Broken News top story. As always, you can find links to our sources as well as more information below. Until next time.